Good afternoon and welcome to Setting Up Your Classroom for Success using the pyramid model to support your classroom. I am your tech host, Brittany. If you have any questions or technical difficulty navigating this platform, please feel free to send me a message. Please be settled in a non-disruptive place, just like you would be if you were attending this training in person. Virtual webinars are no different than in-person engagement and requires the same level of interaction, participation, and attention. Please be advised that UMB is recording this session. You do have the option to leave, but if you continue to participate after receiving this notice, your consent to being recorded is implied.
All right. Thank you so much, Brittany, for that introduction. Welcome, everyone. As you're getting settled in, we're waiting for others to join. If you want to go ahead and use your chat feature, you can open up the chat, say hello, and share one thing you love about the first week of school. So get your fingers ready, say hello in the chat, and tell us what's one thing you love about the beginning of the school year. And just to be aware, make sure you're clicking the, so do folks have access to the chat? I'm not seeing people on here, but click the to everyone if you. Oh, it says the chat is disabled. I'm sorry, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for letting us know that it's disabled. We'll get working on that. But all right. Well, we'll continue on while we figure out the chat and getting it active. But you all have already, oh, yay, okay, people are, it's working now, yay. Thank you so much, Brittany and Tiara, for helping us with that. All right, everyone's typing in the chat saying hello. All right, good to see you all. Meeting all the new faces, the excitement of parents bringing their little ones to school. Awesome. Love the excitement of the kiddos coming to class. Meeting the new students, excitement, a lot about the excitement, seeing all the kids, start of a new year, new students. Absolutely.
I love that comment about the excitement of the possibilities of a new year. I feel that too, like it feels like such a good kind of clean start and lots of possibilities. Lots of potential.
Well, as you're getting settled in, please feel free to continue checking in on the chat, saying hello and letting us know what is your favorite thing about the start of a new year. Getting a lot of great answers, so thank you for all of that. While you're entering in the chat, we're going to go ahead and get started. Our webinar today, as Brittany mentioned, is titled Setting Up Your Classroom for Success, using the pyramid model to support your early childhood classroom, or in general, your early childhood room and setting. My name is Ashley Farringer, and I'm joined by my colleague, Rachel Venata. We both work for the Institute of Innovation and Implementation at the University of Maryland School of Social Work. We work on the Parents, Infants, and Early Childhood team within that institute. The PEAK team, well, title it the PEAK team, works across the state of Maryland to support early childhood settings and family serving agencies with evaluation, technical assistance, and support with implementing evidence-based practices. In particular today, we're talking about a model that we support with the help of MSDE, which is the Maryland Pyramid Model. Hopefully many of you have heard of the pyramid model before. Maybe you're more familiar with the title of SEFL, the Social Foundations for Early Learning. And they are one and the same. The pyramid model is just a more updated version. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through today. I want to thank you all for sharing what you love about the beginning of the school year. We know that there is a lot of excitement at the beginning of the year, but there's also a lot of challenges at the start of the year, particularly for young children who are learning social and emotional skills and learning how the classroom environment operates and how that environment differs from their home environment. So this can create some challenges, some headaches as we're getting ready for the year. And so as the school year starts, or if we're just headed into the fall for a year-round program, we at the Maryland Pyramid Model program wanted to share with you all some key elements to setting up your children for success. So that's our focus for today. Many of you are using the chat well. If you have questions throughout the presentation, there's also a question and answer box. It's best to put your questions in there because we'll be able to easily see them at the end of the presentation. So we'll probably go until about 12:50, and then we'll reserve some time for answering questions. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, please put them in the question and answer section. The chat is just for general comments. We'll follow that as we go along as well. All right, so what are our objectives today? What do we hope you walk away from? So in the welcome email that you got about 30 minutes before the presentation, you should have gotten a link to a document that we'll be using kind of as a guide for our discussion points for how to set your classroom up for success. This guide I'll just show you here now, and you have the link in your welcome email. This is called Rebuilding the Pyramid, Reconnecting After a Break. This is a resource created by the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations, which is the national body that continues to update the pyramid model with new research, new resources, and they have a lot of great stuff that you can use in your rooms and classrooms. And so we'll be following this advice for 6 key elements that can really help us set our classrooms up for success and set our children up for success as they start a new school year. So we'll see here the things we'll be reviewing. We want you to review key practices to set up your early childhood rooms for success, including developing consistent and supportive schedules and routines, teaching classroom expectations, giving positive descriptive feedback, building supportive relationships, and providing emotional support and support for emotional learning. After this session, we are recording, so we will share the recording with you afterwards. We also have some resources that we'll definitely be mentioning throughout the presentation and be sharing with you afterwards. Before we dive into those specific sections, though, I do want to just give a brief overview of the pyramid model. I'm seeing some people using their reactions, so awesome. Yeah, you have access to send us reactions, tell us what you're thinking about what we're discussing through the reactions features as well. So the pyramid model, you may or may not be familiar with this model, but it has been the same since it was called CEPL. This is what the pyramid has looked like. It is a social emotional framework that starts with looking at what are things that all students need to develop their social emotional skills. What are the things that a smaller group of students may need to help them build their social emotional skills, and then looking at the top, what are things that we can do to support children that need more intensive individualized support for their social emotional needs. And the entire pyramid is supported by that yellow platform, which is an effective workforce, which is all of you on here, which is all of you participating in webinars like this, in training and professional development opportunities, and learning, and your systems that you work in being aware of this as well, and creating policies that promote and sustain the use of evidence-based practices. So just to go a little bit deeper, that bottom tier is a lot of what we'll mostly talk about today, because it really is the foundation of setting up children for good, healthy social emotional development. And that includes building nurturing and responsive relationships and having high quality supportive environments. Tier 2 of the pyramid, which again is with that tier 1 stuff in place, you're going to have smaller groups of students that still need a little extra support with learning some social emotional skills. We should be systematically teaching social emotional skills, but we may need to think about how we can also individualize the teaching of social emotional skills. And finally, that top tier is intensive intervention for children that maybe need an individualized behavior support plan. So as we get started with the year, really focusing on tiers 1 and 2 to lay a good foundation for our students. All right, so let's jump right into it. And let's get started with the discussion of an important element that is essential to any early childhood room or classroom, and that is having a classroom schedule. So let's talk a bit about why classroom schedules are so important for young children. So schedules provide predictability, letting children know what to expect throughout their day and what comes next. They also provide consistency, creating a sense of safety, stability, and control. And when children feel safe and in control, they are less likely to participate in unwanted behaviors that are really them just communicating feelings of uncertainty. So we can start and help our children by giving them consistency and structure through a classroom schedule. So let's look a little bit at what exactly are some key elements to daily schedules. Well, first off, they're visual. They include picture representations of the activity to help children learn and understand the schedule more easily. There are many online resources that have cartoon pictures or picture images of daily schedules that you can download for free and use. We actually will share some of the resources after this webinar as well. And we have one specific example from the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations that will be a resource that we can share with you afterwards as well. But get creative with this and how they're visual. One fun idea for the beginning of the year is to take pictures of children in your room doing the activities in the schedule, then using those images as your schedule. So have them do the activity, take the picture, and it lets them see, oh, this is our daily activity schedule. And I do that activity. That's me coming in from recess and going to circle time or things like that. Schedules should also be inclusive of different home languages that children in your room speak. So for example, if you have text in both English and Spanish, if you have Spanish speakers in your classroom, it can really help engage children whose primary language is not English and who might be speaking another language in the home more frequently. All right, sorry, I forgot that I keep clicking through this. That's our inclusive. Schedules should be inclusive. Additionally, schedules should be displayed in a place where children can see it throughout the day and where it's easy for us as the adults to remember to reference it throughout the day. If our schedule's hidden away, something like that, we might forget that we should be referring to this throughout the day. It's also important that where it is at the eye level of the children so that they can see it easily and be more engaged in it. You know, if it's at our level when we're standing, it's really hard. We got to think of the classroom from the perspective of the child. And maybe it's a little silly, but maybe as you're setting up your room, you get down on that level and see what does this look like from the eyes of a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old? What can they see and what can they easily engage with? So it may be hard for children to see and engage if it's at our level. Finally, for thinking about setting up our schedules, when we're developing a schedule, we want to make sure that there's a balance of activities. There should be an even balance of adult-directed and child-directed activities. And adult-directed activities should be no more than 20 minutes in length. So if you have a schedule that starts with morning circle, maybe your morning circle goes about on average 40 minutes, then you go to a small group activity led by the teacher and maybe paraeducator, then you come back to circle for story time. That's a lot of adult directed activities all at once. So perhaps you might think of mixing it up with some free play opportunities intermixed in there, or opportunities during things like circle time where children are doing more free activities like open conversations with their neighbor, or things like that that are helping them develop skills led by them. When children spend too much time in adult-directed activities, there's a greater tendency for disengagement, which can lead to disruptive behaviors. Thus, having a well-balanced schedule can be a great prevention tool for undesired behaviors and help kids know what's expected and what's happening. So with each section, we're gonna, oh, sorry, I jumped ahead. So each section, we're gonna give you the what, the why, the how. So for the how, just a couple of things to think about. We wanna make sure we're teaching and reteaching it throughout the year, not just at the beginning of the year, but throughout the year, and particularly if there's a break or if a new student joins our classroom. We want to refer to the schedule throughout the day. So anytime we're moving into another activity, it can be helpful to refer to the schedule and say what's coming up next and what we already finished. This helps children learn the schedule more easily as well and become more confident in following the schedule. It can be helpful to maybe have a marker for activities that have already passed, such as a paper that covers it or a clothespin that you can move throughout the day. And using a schedule helper can be a great way to get children involved in reviewing the schedule. So since schedules provide predictability and consistency, it's also really important for us to note any changes. So even if you know a change is happening, that doesn't mean the kids are going to know that it's happening. So we have to alert children to when there might be changes in our daily routine. It helps them know it's coming and increase that predictability of the schedule. And finally, we want to think about individualizing schedules. This is really especially important for children that maybe struggle with navigating through their day. Perhaps there's a child that's having separation anxiety, and reviewing the schedule one-on-one with them and describing the fun activities that are going to happen that day and when mom or dad will come back will help the child settle into the day. Additionally, maybe a child struggles with transitions, and giving them their own individual schedule that they can hold in view might help them better understand the changes throughout the day and be more engaged in those transitions. So there's some key things to think about when we're thinking about schedules. For each section, we have a few short video examples just to give you some ideas for different ways that these things can be put in place in your rooms. So we'll start with looking at one example where the schedule is actually horizontal and at children's eye level.
What did we do first? What did mommy and daddy do? They brought us to school. You're right, Jeremiah. And then what did we do? That's later on in the day. We sleep later. Then what did we do? Breakfast. We ate breakfast. Breakfast. And then what did we do? Played in centers. What are we going to do next? Go outside. We're going to go outside. You look so excited to go outside, Tavia. You're happy.
Awesome. All right, so you saw in that video that the kind of a neat idea to have the schedule on a board that you can move around rather than in one place. This is a great example of how the teacher used pictures that were of the students doing it and engaged them in conversation about what was happening there. Brittany, I believe we have one more video example for this section. Okay, so we're going to look at a classroom example where we see the teacher and the students going through a horizontal schedule like we see in the picture.
Let's see, did we all come to school today? Did mommies and daddies come and sign us in and bring us to school? That's Bentley. Arrival time is over. Finished. Did we have breakfast this morning? What did you have for breakfast this morning, Armani? We had applesauce and had cereal. Breakfast time is over. I see it's torn. It's okay. Finished. Did you brush your teeth, Armani? Darwin, did you brush your teeth this morning? Toothbrush time is over. Finished. Let's see what's going to happen next. Let's look. Now it's time to go take a walk. We're going to go have some active time. Let's go to the door. Let's go to the door so we can take a walk. Are you ready? Let's go to the door. Time for active time.
All right. So in that video, we saw a couple good things. We saw that the schedule was at eye level. Those are very young kids, so we got to think about what does the classroom look like from their level. And it was also horizontal. A lot of times we think about having our schedule vertically written, but it helps build other skills when we think about normally we read things from, in English at least, from left to right. And so having that horizontally laid out is helping develop other skills as well. We also see the teacher engaging in brief conversations about the schedule with the students and using fun things like song to talk about things that have already passed and physically covering up things that have already happened in the day to help kids know what has happened and where are we going next.
Thank you. I am going to talk a little bit about routines. And so routines are sort of related to schedules, but they're a little bit different. And so, the schedule tells us kind of the order of operations for the day. Maybe we start with circle time or morning meeting and move to centers and then go to recess, things like that. Whereas our routines are specific steps that let children know kind of how to go through common activities that occur in the classroom. Like, what are they supposed to do when they arrive? How do they get ready for nap time? What's kind of the procedure or the process for using the restroom? So, for example, maybe the lunch routine or getting ready for lunch is the children clean up their area, they wash their hands, they pick up their lunchbox from their cubbies, and they take a seat. So that's kind of the what of the routines. And there are a number of reasons why teaching routines is really helpful for children. So for one, they give children an increased sense of confidence and competence. And this helps them, move through the classroom independently. And that feels good. It feels good for children to know what it is that they're doing and to be able to execute that. It also contributes to a feeling of safety and predictability in the same way that when Ashley was talking about the schedule, the routines sort of do the same thing. It feels, predictable that this is how we go through each of these activities in the day. And this sense of safety and predictability, this is important and helpful for all children, but it's especially important for children who in their home life, maybe it doesn't feel quite as consistent. And also in the situation where children have experienced trauma, either big T trauma or little t traumas, that sense of safety and predictability can be really helpful. And you put those things together and we can't forget then that it also contributes to positive behavior and the behavior that you want to see from your children in the class as they get to know the routines and again are sort of able to do them independently. So that's why they help. But also, I wanted to spend a minute talking about why we actually need to teach them. And I think this is something that as adults, we might not always think about because, for example, like whatever your morning routine is, you probably don't really have to think about it too much. You've done it so many times that you know what your morning routine is, or you know what your evening routine is. But for children, the routines in the classroom, they might be quite different. For example, you know, the routines in your classroom might be different from the routines at home. And some children, you know, haven't been in a school or classroom environment at all. And so they might not have any experience with classroom routines. And, you know, while ultimately, if you sort of do the same routine over and over without teaching it, children will eventually get it, right? So if every morning you sort of guide them through the same steps, but don't teach them, eventually, certainly they will get that that's what they're supposed to do when they come. If it's explicitly taught, the acquisition happens so much faster. And so, you know, we really want to be intentional about talking through what those routines are, you know, throughout the day. And certainly, you know, as you're getting to, as you're potentially, many of you are getting ready to start a new year, you know, there are a lot of classroom routines. So you can't teach them all at once. So one thing that you might think about is just sort of like, you know, prioritizing what feels most important and starting there, and then continuing to reinforce those things and teaching new ones along the way as well. So those are some of the whys of, you know, both why they help and why we need to specifically teach them. And now we'll talk for just a couple of minutes about the how. So again, teaching them really explicitly and overtly, and with an opportunity to practice. And so, you know, let's say that this image here on the left is your morning routine. You would, you know, tell your children explicitly what they're to do. But then you might also practice where, you know, you have everyone line up outside with their backpack and practice coming into the classroom, hanging up their backpack, getting their lunchbox out, putting their drink away, putting their folder away, and signing in, you know, however you've set that up. So actually kind of going through that routine. And like a lot of the things that we're talking about today, it's really helpful to support the teaching of these routines with a visual, so that children can see those visual steps. And we want to just make sure that we are, you know, teaching and reinforcing consistently. And so as much as we can, again, kind of like the schedule, you know, as much as it can stay consistent and then we can consistently teach it, the faster the acquisition is and the more comfortable children become with it. And then again, they're really able to move through them independently. And that feels good. And, you know, if you think about it for ourselves as adults, when we start something new, like if you're starting a new job or something, when you kind of feel like you know what the routines are, that feels better than when you show up and are kind of like, I'm not really sure, like, you know, what the day is going to look like or how I'm supposed to do this. It's very much the same, except magnified for children. So we have a little example of an arrival routine, and this is in a family childcare setting, but the same, you know, very easily, I think you could see and translate it to a classroom as well.
Hey, Rachel, quick. Can
Yes.
you try to open the hyperlink? It won't allow me to open it.
Oh, sure.
Let me
Let's
see.
Okay, yes, let me.
I have it. I can
Oh.
move it over since I'm sharing my screen right now.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Ashley.
Let me just make sure I'm sharing my sound. Okay.
First thing to do, Isabel. What's next? Say bye-bye, Mommy. Bye-bye, Mom. You're doing so good. You want to hold my hand? Come on, I'll hold your hand. Oh, mommy will be back, right? Does mommy come back every day? Okay.
One last time. One last time. Come here. Come on in. You gotta listen to Nana.
Oh, she was just watching. She's just a
That's-
little bit sad, but she's smiling.
Bye.
Come on.
No. Bye-bye.
Say bye, mommy. See you
Have a
later,
good day.
alligator. Let's go find your picture. Can you check in? Just a moment. I see right here on this that we need to just come over here. We said bye to mommy. Now we're gonna check in. Uh-oh, that's not you. Which one is you? I for Isabel. Do you see an I for Isabel anywhere? Yes, that's it. You got it. Where are you gonna ride on the bus today? Where are you gonna ride? Where are you gonna ride? Do you want to ride at the back of the bus or in the middle of the bus? In the middle of the bus, right under. Oh, there at the back. Thank you. Come on. What's next? Do you remember what's next? Do you remember what's next? Oh, she's saying hi, friends. Hi, friends. All right, so let's come over here. Let's go wash now. Great job, girl. Go wash.
Thanks, Ashley. A couple of things that stand out to me as I watch that are that, you see that the teacher really kind of prompting the child and guiding her through what that morning routine is, kind of helping her identify each step along the way of what she does as she comes in. She frequently asks, do you remember what's next? What's our next step? It's quick, but she referred to a visual. She said, I see here that this is what we're supposed to do next. And then she thanks, kind of reinforces the child when she puts her little square on the bus as well. And so over time, eventually with repetition, again, this child will start to be able to move through that arrival routine more independently. But in the meantime, the teacher really supports that process and supports that routine. So we're going to move now from talking about routines to talking about expectations and teaching expectations. And these, I think these connect well and have a lot of similarities because as we're teaching routines, we're really teaching children what it is that we want them to do or behavior that it is that we want to see. And as the adults in the room, we are reminding children and supporting children with what the behaviors are that we want to see throughout the day. But here, when we talk about expectations, I'm also going to talk more specifically about some things that you might sort of conceptualize as like classroom rules that would either go across the classroom, like no matter what, these are kind of the expectations, or maybe you have, specific expectations for circle time, or specific expectations for when when children are in the art center, things like that. So those are that's kind of the what of the expectations. And in terms of the why do we need to teach expectations? Again, there's certainly some overlap between teaching the routines and teaching the behaviors. So for one, children don't automatically know kind of what behavior it is that we're wanting to see in the classroom. And they might not be familiar playing in groups of children or being around other children. And so kind of not knowing what some of that behavior is that you would, want to see with peers playing with one another. And actually, Ashley, would you mind bumping to the next slide? Thank you. So, and this is true, this part about children not being familiar, either playing in groups or just playing with other children. This was true, potentially, especially for very young children, forever. But I think it's particularly true for a lot of children as a result of the pandemic. At this point, more children are kind of being around each other and playing with others as well. Playing with others at this point, but there has certainly been, for most children, probably like less overall time playing with peers, being in groups, things like that, than we would typically anticipate or typically see. And the behavior expectations can really vary, whether it's, you know, different behavior expectations that children have from their classroom last year to this year, or from their home to here. You know, for some children, their home might be kind of a living jungle gym. They can climb on the couches, they can hop on the coffee tables and jump off. You know, it might be kind of jungle gym-like. That's probably not what you want in your classroom. But if children are coming in where that has been, you know, that has been okay, if they don't know otherwise, they're gonna also see the classroom as jungle gym-like. So really just wanting to make sure that we give them, you know, give them the tools to be successful in the classroom. And again, knowing the expectations really increases their feeling of comfort. You know, I was kind of trying to think about like an adult analogy, and what struck me was thinking about, let's imagine as an adult that you go to a faith ceremony or a house of worship that you've never been to before. So you don't know anything about it, and you walk in, you don't know how the ceremony or service is going to go, you don't really know how to engage with it. Imagine doing that alone and what that would feel like, versus if you're there and someone next to you says, hey, Rachel, by the way, here's what this is going to look like. This is kind of the order of operations. This is the procedure. And here's how you can engage. Here's how you can participate. And how much more comfortable that feels as an adult, and how much more likely you are to follow along and do what it is that, you know, is sort of socially acceptable behavior for whatever that ceremony or service or what have you is. And so it's the same for children. And in that, you know, for children coming into school, the teacher is that sort of support person to say, hey, here are some of these routines, here's what I want you to do. And that just feels so much better. And it really sets children up so much better to be able to succeed, and results in fewer behavior concerns. So if you can't tell, I get kind of jazzed up about it, because I think it's one of those things that sometimes we take for granted. We feel like, no, they know what they're supposed to do. Well, not always. So we can really explicitly teach it. So we'll talk about that now, kind of the how. How is it that we do this? We want to state what we want. And here, you know, being really intentional about stating it positively. What is it that you want children to do? Please walk, or please use your walking feet, versus don't run, or please raise a quiet hand to answer a question at circle time, rather than, you know, don't shout it out. When we don't tell them what we want, they know what we don't want, but that doesn't really help them know what we do want. So really being intentional about what it is that we want. Being intentional about limiting the number. You know, we don't want to give 14 expectations to a 4-year-old and anticipate that they're going to be able to, you know, successfully sort of follow all of those. So really being, you know, intentional about having a few, maybe 3 to 5. Here again, reinforcing with a visual, you'll see that as a common theme, and reviewing these expectations regularly in like a structured way. For example, you know, at circle time, kind of reviewing what the expectations are, but also just as you move throughout the day, and as, you know, there are natural opportunities. For example, you know, if you look at this image here, if walking is one of the expectations, there are a lot of opportunities throughout the day to remind children that you want them to walk, right? So you can sort of, you might review all of them at structured times, but then as different situations come up where it's appropriate, really reminding and reinforcing. And again, posting the expectations or the rules, both in English as well as in the language that children are speaking at home. So those are some ways that we can do that. And again, you know, really reinforcing when children do what it is that we ask, and reinforcing in a specific way. You know, thank you for using your walking feet when you transition to snack time. Thank you for raising a quiet hand when you answered this question, things like that. So here's a quick video example of talking about classroom expectations.
Expectations. What is this? She's saying we use our words. Say, play with me. Play with me. Or you can say, oh, dance. Oh, yeah. Or you can say, please stop. I don't like it. All right? Yes, we use our words at school. Let's see what else, Serena. What else? We just did this. First we play and then we clean up.
Good job, Serenity.
Callie, you were using your gentle hands. Can you show me your gentle hands?
Thank you, Callie.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I love gentle. Thank you.
Gentle hand with your
Did
friend.
you?
Go ahead.
I love gentle hands. Oh, Serenity. You were using gentle hands. Listen in ears. The last one. We are going to use our walking feet to be safe.
Yeah.
Yes. And now we're gonna use our walking feet to go touch the
Picture.
pictures. All right. Stand up.
I love that, teacher. So a couple of things that you see or that I really appreciate about that. One is, so she has those visuals, and the video quality isn't great, but I think it looks like it's pictures of the children in the classroom doing the things, which I just love. And it's very, it's very specific. She talks about what it is that she wants the children to do. And I loved the part with the gentle hands. They were practicing, right? There was kind of an opportunity where they were using their gentle hands, and she was really reinforcing of what it was, really reinforcing of their gentle hands. So again, there are a lot of ways to do it, but that is certainly one way to talk about some expectations. All right, so I think, Ashley, I will turn it back over to you.
Great. So moving right along, a lot of this stuff is connected and all works together to create a classroom environment where everyone can be engaged and be successful, whatever that looks like for each individual child. And so Rachel just shared for us teaching expectations and how it is essential for letting children know what to do throughout the day. But how do we build these skills so that we don't maybe always need to tell children what to do, so we can help them learn about what's going on in the environment? Of course, at the beginning of the year, we're definitely going to need to be doing that more and more. But the way that we build those skills is we provide positive descriptive feedback. So why is it important for us to provide positive descriptive feedback to the activities that children are doing? Feedback that is descriptive helps children learn new skills by letting them know that we see what they're doing and they're doing the skill that is expected of them. We're giving them that positive attention that they need to know, oh, okay, I got this. I can be successful at this. Positive descriptive feedback also helps increase engagement in a desired activity. Lots of times we have a tendency to just kind of let kids that are doing what we want them to do just be and do their thing. But really what we want to do is we want to call that out, engage with them, let them know, wow, you're playing so nicely with the puzzle, and shared with your friend Susan. That's being a good friend. Like, really call out those things so that we see more of that positive behavior. Will increase the likelihood of engagement in the positive behavior and positive things that we want to see when we call it out. Additionally, positive descriptive feedback helps build relationships by letting children know we care about them and that we know they can be successful, that we see them doing the things that we want to see in the classroom. And it, at this age, I'd say throughout childhood and growing up, that attention is really important and helps build relationships and trust. So this is a key element. We'll talk a little bit more about the importance of relationships in a moment, but let's look a little bit closer at a little bit of the how do we provide descriptive feedback. All right, so when we're looking to give descriptive feedback, like I just said, we want to notice when children are engaged, when they're following directions, when they're being good friends and helping their friends, and we want to call these out. Feedback is more meaningful when it's descriptive. And so when we're giving feedback, we want to describe the behavior by including it in the feedback itself. And we'll see a few examples of this in just a moment, but more than saying something like, good job, thank you, that doesn't help build the skill. That doesn't help me understand, what did I do a good job at? I need to be told what I did a good job at and given that descriptive feedback. So this takes praise to the next level. It takes it to really describing and narrating what we saw the child do. We want to, as much as possible, acknowledge it publicly. So children, when we see children who are engaged, following directions, or being good friends, public acknowledgement can reinforce the skill or process for the child that you are acknowledging and provide a model for other children. So not only is it beneficial for the child that's engaging in the positive behavior, it also cues other children in that, oh, that's the behavior that gets me that acknowledgement and attention as well. And I'm going to strive for that behavior as well. Just like with everything, we want to individualize it. You know, we want to call the child out, call them by their name, include key elements that they're specifically doing, as well as, just like we've mentioned with the other areas, we want to provide feedback in the child's home language as much as possible as well. So maybe if we're not familiar with their language, we can learn some key phrases, even if the part of it is in their home language. That's a good way to help them. It's a good way to help them understand what's going on and what they're getting praised for. And praising children for individual accomplishments and recognizing children will be at different levels of learning new skills. So we need to provide positive descriptive feedback as children are learning skills as well, not just when they've gotten to the full skill that we want. That'll increase skill uptake. We want to be consistent as well. As much as possible, we want to make sure that the adults in the classroom know how and when to give positive descriptive feedback. We want to pay attention to how often we're giving it, and are we giving feedback equitably? Are there children in the classroom that are acknowledged all the time and children that never receive acknowledgement? And if that's so, how can we make sure that we're more equitably sharing feedback? Finally, we do want to think about what feedback means to families. So thinking about the family culture and how giving feedback is perceived. So if we want to communicate with families, ask about how in their culture is this perceived. Perhaps acknowledging individual accomplishments is not as important as acknowledging group accomplishments. So things that we want to think about as well. Just here, I'm not going to read all of these. You probably know a lot of them, but just want to give you some examples of what is positive descriptive feedback. You know, I do a lot of classroom observations, and I used to think I saw it a lot until I actually did see someone use positive descriptive feedback. And then I was like, oh, I actually haven't seen this a lot. It's really describing the skill and being very specific about it. And so just want to think about that. Am I being very descriptive and specific here? All right, let's look at an example of giving positive descriptive feedback. And in particular, in this example, we see the use of doing public acknowledgement and giving descriptive feedback for what the child is doing.
Hey, Miss Miss Clarissa. Grayson over here is playing So Fair. He said for 3 minutes, he gets 3 marbles, and I get 2, and then after 3 minutes, we'll trade, and I get 3, and he gets 2.
Grayson, I think that you should get a stamp. I'm gonna come around and get you a stamp.
A stamp?
And 2 stamps!
2 stamps? Wow, you really know how to play fair then.
Grayson, this is your stamp. This is for taking turns with Miss Sarah.
Oh, thanks for
Nice
filling my
job.
bucket.
So you can see in that video, lots of great things going on. We see not only is the feedback acknowledged publicly, but it's also very descriptive in the activity behavior that the child does that is desired. Very descriptive, exactly explaining the thing that the child did that they're being acknowledged for. And we see that the other teacher comes over and fills that in as well. As she's giving the stamp, she's saying, you know, this is for being, I don't remember exactly what she says, but something about being a good friend to Miss so-and-so. And so you see that each teacher is building on that specific descriptive feedback. Also, we see a lot of excitement and modeling that just over the top reaction to what the child's doing that really kind of excites the child and gets them to likely do that again in the future and hopefully use that skill with peers as well. So just like we said, providing positive descriptive feedback helps build relationships. So we want to talk a little bit more about what are some other things that build relationships and recognize that in those early days of the school year, that building relationships is really our primary goal. And we want to do it throughout the year as well. If you're in a year-round program, there's always things we can do when new students join and as we're continuing to build relationships throughout. So relationships really are the foundation of social emotional development. If you think back to that pyramid, it's in that blue foundational tier there. And having positive relationships helps children form positive relationships with their peers and form other positive skills as well. It builds trust. It's not easy to understand, or it's not hard to understand why, if children have trust, we're more likely to see participation in pro-social and positive behaviors. And finally, just like I said, it supports, I went ahead of myself, it supports positive behavior. That relationship is kind of foundational to that. It's that piece that I need first in order to follow expectations, listen to my teacher and peers. It's really foundational to everything. And, you know, relationships are important for all children, but in particular, children who have experienced trauma, relationships are a key piece to mitigating the effects of trauma. So it may seem small, but the time you take to build relationships and really get to know each student is so important. So how do we do that? The what and the how are kind of similar, and the same with building positive relationships. But we really want to be thinking about what are the key elements we can do to build relationships? And a lot of it is about the communication that we have. In the day-to-day classroom, there's a lot of communication that is just task-oriented. We really want to make sure we're increasing conversations, supportive conversations, and other levels of engagement to get to know students. So we want to communicate with students at eye level, children at eye level. We want to speak calmly to children. We want to show respect, consideration, and warmth to all children. What does that mean? That means interacting with individual children verbally during routines and activities. So some of the videos we've seen, we already see that there's some engagement in just general conversation as we go through the activities. We want to have conversations, engage in play, use questions to extend play with children in the classroom. As much as possible, learn key phrases in the child's home language to embed those into verbal interactions and build a relationship with a child that English isn't their first language and who might have a harder time communicating and forming a relationship with you. Understand, learn about the child's interests and incorporate those into your conversations. There's a lot of great resources about that you can send home with families to learn about your child, their child, and they can share what are the key things that they want you to know about their child, and you can incorporate those into your work. And we want to read and respond to children's cues. We're not going to get it every time. We might miss some cues here and there, but as much as possible, we want to make sure that we are reading and responding to children's cues, recognizing when they're engaged, changing things up when they're not. And if children come to us with challenges or problems, we want to be there for them in a respectful and kind manner. Let's take a look at one example of how you can develop meaningful relationships. And first, we're going to look at using conversation when interacting with children.
I see you're picking your favorite colors.
This is not my favorite color.
Yeah, blue's not.
Blue is my mom's favorite color.
Oh, so then it's a special color too.
These are my favorite colors.
Green and orange.
And this my Logan's favorite color.
Logan's favorite color is red.
Uh-huh.
What about your sister?
My sister, this color is not red. It's
Pink
pink and purple.
and purple.
Yeah, that's
Those are
right.
Kate's favorite colors. Huh. She has two favorite colors and you have two favorite colors. Which bead are you going to put on next?
Brown.
Brown? I don't know if we have any brown beads. Which one do you want to put on next?
My favorite color is brown too.
Oh, you have three favorite colors? Wow. You like a lot of colors.
No. These are my two favorite colors. One, two, five.
What are you going to make? I might make a... I don't know. I was thinking about making something with these walls.
All right, you can see building relationships takes a lot of patience sometimes, having good conversations. She really had to draw things out of him. And you could see it in any typical day when you're busy and there's a lot going on, you might be like, all right, well, I got to move on to the next thing. She really sits with him and has a conversation with him, letting him take the lead in what they talk about and what they do. There's a point there where he's talking about his sister, his other siblings, talking about his favorite colors, things that are all about his interests and his life. And she goes with that and follows him through that while engaging in play with him. Now let's take another look at a video that is an example of building positive relationships. One of the key things we want to do is responding to children's cues in a sensitive manner. And so here we'll see a video of a girl that is having a problem, is having a strong emotion, and needs some support from her teacher. So let's see how her teacher responds.
Waiting. Thank you for waiting. You want your mom. You need a hug? I know I'm not your mommy, but I am a mommy, so I know how to give nice mommy hugs. There. Oh no. This stuck to my shirt. Would you want to draw a picture with me?
Sure.
Okay. Let's go meet over by Claire. But I'm gonna first turn my attention to Agam, okay? And I'll come on over, okay? You get started.
All right, so in that video, we see clearly the little girl needs some support. She's feeling sad, she misses her mom. And what the teacher is able to do is really interact one-on-one with her, address her feelings, give her a hug or a supportive, appropriate physical touch. And also redirect her to an activity that she can do that makes her feel good and supports her and helps her recognize her emotion and channel it into something else. She also does a really great job if there are other children around that she is still attending to while giving her full attention to the child that needs some support and that needs her to respond to her cues. And tells her explicitly what's going to happen. You know, you go start work on the project and I'll be right over there. I first need to talk to Agam and then I'll be right over there. So does a good job of stating what's to come, what's expected, giving her the attention she needs, and attending to other students as well.
Couple of minutes to answer some questions. As Ashley mentioned, we'll post all the links in the videos and some other resources as well. So I am a professional counselor by training, and so these emotional competencies are near and dear to my heart, and I feel like I could talk about them for a very long time. So I will try to keep it to about 3 or 4 minutes for us. So two main things that I'm talking about here with regard to emotional competencies are emotional literacy and emotion regulation. And so emotional literacy is really being able to name feelings and to identify feelings in myself, and for me to start being able to identify feelings in others. Whereas emotion regulation kind of goes beyond that. So in order to be able to regulate my emotions, I first have to have some emotional literacy. But so emotion regulation is really being able to handle my emotions and express my emotions appropriately. And so I think, you know, it's really important to remember that our goal is not for children to not have emotions. Right? It's not that we never want them to be upset, or we never want them to be frustrated, or we never want them to be angry. That is neither possible, but nor does it set them up for life where they will feel angry and frustrated and things like that, sometimes hurt, sad, etc. So, you know, really what we're trying to do is to help teach children just how to manage and respond to those emotions. So that's what it is that we're doing. The whys, the list is longer than this, but here are some reasons, especially related to school. In terms of emotional literacy, when children are able to identify their own emotions and start to identify other emotions, they tend to have better interpersonal interactions with other peers, and they tend to be more successful academically. Peers tend to rate them as more likable. Teachers tend to see them as socially skilled, and having a child has to have some emotional competence to be able to sit still, to follow directions, to, you know, kind of enter into group play, all things that we ask children to do in school. And emotion regulation, when children are able to regulate their emotions, they have more energy available to engage in the social and academic endeavors that we want them to engage in. So if a child has no emotion regulation and they spend, you know, much of their day kind of out of control emotionally, there isn't the energy to do other things that help them learn at school. And so in terms of the how do we do this? We can have some visual support or visual cues in the classroom. There are lots of, you know, feeling faces and things like that. This is also something where, you know, you could take pictures of your individual children making some of these different facial expressions and have those in the classroom. Even just labeling and acknowledging, you know, children's feelings. It looks like you're feeling frustrated right now, or, you know, gosh, tell me what you're feeling right now. Your block tower just tumbled over. How are you feeling? You can certainly, use classroom materials, things like books, puppets, storyboards, things like that. We can model as the adult. So whether we want to or not, we are always modeling, but we can very intentionally model, labeling our own feelings. Oh, I'm feeling so excited today because we're going on a field trip this afternoon. And we can also model how we regulate. Oh gosh, I'm feeling a little bit frustrated right now. I'm going to step aside for a minute, take a couple of deep breaths, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to work this out together. So you could just step aside and do that, but it really facilitates learning when you verbalize what it is that you're doing. And you can also talk about and start to teach some of that mind-body connection, like, "Ooh, I see your fists are really clenched. Tell me what's that telling me about how you're feeling," so that children start to understand how their mind and body are connected.
Okay, give Gabby
I love that video. The teacher is doing a number of things there to help children learn to identify their emotions. So for one thing, I love that she has that mirror where the children can see their faces. They can see what their faces look like when, in this case, many of them were happy. When they were talking about being happy, they could see their faces. But the teacher also prompts the other children to sort of guess about how each other are feeling. She says something like, "Look at her face. How is she feeling?" And so that really helps with that piece where, we're trying to teach children not only to recognize and label their own emotions, but also to be able to recognize and label emotions of others as well. And so that part really supports, being able to identify others' emotions. And she really mirrors what she sees. She mirrors the smile back to children and talks about what she's seeing. "I see your happy face. I see your smile." So she does a really nice job of facilitating that circle time feelings check. And so that is that's an example of that first part, that emotional literacy part. And this next video that we're going to watch, it has a little bit of both. It has some of that emotional literacy in it, but it also has some emotion regulation in it as well. So we'll watch that one next.
Come here, Lucia. We need to talk about that strong feeling you were having. Yeah, I see your hands are tight and you're doing this and arms are crossed. You want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Tell me about what feeling you're having.
Claire didn't let me dump the grass down it, and it made me grumpy.
Made you grumpy because it sounded like you wanted to dump the grass. I could understand how that could make you feel grumpy when you have an idea of something you want to do and somebody else did it. Let's take some breaths. Let's take some deep breaths. You ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's breathe. Oh, one moment. I'm going to finish with Lucia here and then I'll turn to you, okay? Let's take a big breath.
Over there.
Now that you've taken some breaths, can you tell me about what might help you feel better?
Only about Huffy Pepper. She's a bunny and she's still inside.
So your bunny inside would help you feel better?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? We're going inside right now and you can go get Hoppy Pepper?
No, Huffy Pepper.
Hoffin Pepper? Okay, let's go get Hoffin Pepper. Look at that. Aww.
So you saw kind of both pieces in that video. At first, and a minute ago, we were talking about teaching some of that mind-body connection. At first, you see the teacher acknowledge. She said something like, "I see your hands and your fists and your arms are crossed." She's really acknowledging the body language that she's seeing from the child. And then she validates the feeling of grumpiness. She asks the child to identify what feeling she's having, and the child says grumpy, and she validates that. I can understand why, if you had this idea and you weren't able to do it, or someone else did it, that you would feel grumpy, and that's validating of that feeling. She helps the child to regulate. She, talks about, let's take some deep breaths together, and she joins that. She does it with her. She takes the deep breaths with her. And then she encourages the child to think about what else might be helpful, kind of like another coping skill. She doesn't phrase it that way, but that's kind of what she's asking, what other coping skill might you be able to use? And that's when the child identified that finding her bunny would be helpful. So here again, we have a couple of cool videos, but we will include those in the resources to follow up. So here's our website, and Ashley made this lovely QR code, which feels very fancy, but we have some great resources on our website. There's a tab that has that says resources, and then if you scroll down to the bottom, you can enter your email address and get on our mailing list, so you'll get information and updates and newsletters and things like that from us. So please don't hesitate to stay in touch. And I realize we're coming in short, but are there any questions? Brittany, are there any questions that we can answer in these next couple minutes? So there you'll see where Ashley is. That's where you can subscribe. And there up at the top, there's lots of information, but up at the top is where you'll see that resources tab. Lots of good resources there. And again, we'll post some more resources in the LMS, which is where you registered for this.
We do have a question in the chat. Can we ask students or their peers to model positive behavior so other students can understand the how to, for example, being a line leader or staying in line while waiting for the water fountain?
That's a great question. And yes, it can certainly be helpful for peers to model, and for the teacher to explicitly sort of talk about what it is that they are modeling and reinforcing that. And that both reinforces it for that student who is doing it, and for the other students who are learning through observation as well. Great question.
All right, we don't have any more questions in the chat. However, we do have thank yous and how lovely of a job you both did, and that this webinar was very informative.
Thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate it. This is something that Ashley and I feel really passionate about, and it's just really exciting to see so many people here who are interested in starting off the year on a great foot and really supporting our children. So thank you all so very much for all of the work that you do. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you all so much. And we will, like we've said, be sending out follow-up to this webinar with the recording and some of the resources, including the videos that maybe we didn't get a chance to share. So thank you.
Quick question in the chat. Someone said, how do we get a certificate?
There isn't one, right? Or do we do a participation, Ashley? Or
there's probably a certificate of participation. So we can give information about how to find those in the follow-up, because they're in the place where you registered for the session. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are we good?
I did go ahead and stop the stream.
Okay.
And